And happy Tuesday, wherever you happen to be. Thank you for joining us for Humanities at Play. So for those of you who might not know me, my name is Kathleen Kuo, and I'm a program manager with Nevada Humanities, which is our state's council partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. So with Humanities at Play, our goal is to pair gameplay, popular culture, and media with really thoughtful and fun conversations about the topics and themes with our invited guests. And I'm really excited for today's guest, Stacy Hackner. I'm going to introduce her in a little bit, but I know that we may have some new followers and users today joining us. So I just want to share a couple of quick notes before we get started. First of all, if you're a first-time Twitch user, welcome in. Thanks so much for braving the internet and new platforms to join us here. Thanks for being here with us today. Make sure you create a free account if you would like to participate and join and chat with us. Feel free to say hi and ask all the questions. If you aren't already following us, you can also do that by clicking the purple heart, and that way you'll get our notifications whenever we're live. And then finally, if you're a newer user of Twitch, we have a really fun feature which is called a chat command, and that's an exclamation point followed by a keyword. So you'll see we have a couple example keywords or commands in the title of our stream, but you'll also see some in the About section of our Twitch stream. So Daniel, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you. So today on stream, I am thrilled to be joined by Dr. Stacy Hackner. Stacy is joining me all the way from London today. So Stacy is a bioarchaeologist currently lecturing creative health at University College London. Her work focuses on increasing understanding of the racist, sexist, and colonial history of scientific research, and she also advocates for more nuance and criticality in teaching the subjects. Her current practice uses object-based learning to invigorate classrooms of all ages, and her research is in community well-being engagement. So Stacy, thanks so much for joining me today. Yeah, I am super excited. So this is a little bit of a disclaimer. I went to college with Stacy, and this is how I know Stacy well, and of just the wonderful research. And I just thought I would love to get Stacy on stream. And Unpacking, which is the game we're about to play today, is such a wonderful way to get to know Stacy better and learn more about all of the stuff in the world around us and sort of how it connects back to the humanities. And along the way, I'll also have some other really fun conversations. So Unpacking is, I would call it kind of like a puzzle type game. It was developed by Witchbeam Studio, and it was published in 2021 by Humble Bundle. And this is a game which is just so neat. That narrative, and you learn more about the protagonist, and a narrative unfolds as we unpack their boxes and find out what's in them. And it's just so relatable, and I'm super excited to play this with Stacy. So again, for everyone in chat, we always love to hear from you. Feel free to ask questions. We're going to take a short 5-minute or so break after about an hour of gameplay, and then we'll segue into a more formal one-on-one interview with Stacy. But of course, over the course of the game, we'll be asking Stacy questions as well. So for everyone in chat, I hope you're settled in and comfy. Don't forget to hydrate, and let's get started. All right, Stacy, can you see this game?
Yes, I can see it now.
All right, I love this. First of all, I'm going to turn the music up so everyone in chat can hear the music. All right. So
if there's no music, maybe I should just kind of hum along when I'm not talking.
yeah, absolutely. We can sort of we can imagine what kind of music might have been playing during these time periods. Okay, I love this. This book belongs to, what should we name it? Should we name it Stacy? Kathleen?
Hard question. How about Stella? Because that's my performance alter ego.
I love that, and I'm going to ask you questions about that in a little bit. I have so many questions. This book belongs to Stella. Let's get going. Okay, 1997. In 1997, actually this is the first time I've ever made this connection. I think I moved in 1997 or 1998 for the first time. I was in 3rd grade. And yeah, so we're just gonna start clicking through these boxes. Yeah. Okay, so just right off the bat, I would imagine that this belongs to a little girl, and I'm just making these assumptions based off like the color and sort of the kind of toys, but I know that, you know, that's not always a fair assumption to make, and I'm curious to know, you know, if in your work as an archaeologist, if you also struggle with sort of making similar judgments as you go through people's things of the past and present.
Oh, I mean, I think we live in a day and age when marketing, especially for children's toys, is really gendered, and that's not quite something that we see in the ancient world. And actually, there's an absence of children from writing about and research on the ancient world in general. Things like fluffy toys don't really survive very well.
Oh.
So we have things like that are like, there's a couple in the Peachy Museum, which is the Museum of Egyptology where I used to work, and it's like little things on wheels that you pull. Occasionally there are dolls. We don't know the gender of who they would have belonged to, really.
Mm-hmm.
There might be more work in, actually, I can't think of any children's graves that have grave goods associated with them, or with toys at least. I did work on a large children's cemetery in Greece, but none of those had burial artifacts.
Huh.
So I guess maybe I should explain that a bioarchaeologist is an archaeologist who works on human remains.
Okay. I was wondering, yeah, what is the difference between archaeology and bioarchaeology? And I'm sure there's a bunch of other types.
Yeah, I did just launch into discussing children's graves really suddenly. So archaeology looks at how humans existed in the past based on the things they left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of object-based analysis. And a bioarchaeologist in particular looks at skeletons and mummies and other parts of humans that may have been buried, left behind, deposited in bogs. And if there are artifacts associated with that individual, then that's even better, because we can learn more about their lives, or more about what society thinks that their lives were like, based on the artifacts that they were buried with.
Stacy, we have several people who are excited to see you in chat. We have someone named Love Milk who says, "Hi, Stacy." So very exciting. I hope you can all hear Stacy. I turned the volume down. I did notice that the music was a little bit loud, so thank you for letting us know. Stacy, I love that there's trolls and looks like maybe like My Little Pony and maybe like a Sailor Moon type backpack. So a lot of great nostalgic pop culture references.
Yeah, this is very 90s. There are people who work on archaeology of modernity.
What is that?
And just looking at modern things through an archaeological theoretical framework.
Okay.
And I think that the most recent I tend to look at is industrial archaeology, because I think it's really fascinating. I quite like mills and abandoned factories, things like that. There's archaeology of space, looking at space trash.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like outer space. I was thinking like space, like the spaces around us, but no, like space.
Yeah, outer space. Because
wow.
Every time something gets sent into space, there's more and more debris, and also satellites that finish their utility and then just kind of stick around forever in outer orbit. And so you can actually look at history of technology and what kinds of things were sent up, and also more theoretical questions like, what do we consider garbage?
Okay.
Especially when it's something that costs millions of dollars to put into space.
Stacy, how did you get into archaeology?
I wanted to be an archaeologist since I was about 10. Before that, I wanted to be a chef.
A chef?
I started to get interested in history, and I went on an archaeological excavation that was like a dig for a day family event, and I held a cup handle that was probably about 6,000 years old, and I was absolutely enthralled, and I thought, oh wow, this is something that nobody has touched in 6,000 years. I'm the first person to hold this, and because it was a handmade pottery cup handle, it had a little thumb impression in it, and I couldn't keep it, but it was a wonderful feeling to feel that sense of connection with ancient times and with this ancient person who'd made it or maybe used it. And I told my family how excited it was, and none of them were really that enthusiastic.
That's very cool, Stacy. So just for everyone in chat, I just wanted to let you know, we're getting some comments that the audio's low. I've turned the music down, and I've turned Stacy's volume on my end. So it's possible that Stacy, if you're able, I don't want you to shout, but I have you on at max volume on my end.
Yeah, Maybe
Okay.
it might be a headphone issue. I can try to speak louder.
Okay, and I will also, make sure to turn, I'm going to just turn the volume of the game a little bit lower. Thanks, everyone, for noting. So we'll, really, Stacy is the star. We like the music, but we can always hum. Okay, should be good now.
I think something I'm noticing is the amount of objects that are coming out of these boxes.
Yes.
And it really reflects, I think, modernity and consumerism and how many things we own now compared to how many things people owned in the past, and also how many of our items are made for such a short life, and things to be like collected. What am I saying here? There's nothing in here that's like single use. A lot of these could be comfort items or kept for a really long time through this person's childhood.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you look at photos of the things that we own today and the amount of things that we touch in a day, it's quite high compared to especially how many things children would have owned or interacted with uh, 200 or 300 years ago.
Yeah, I think it is very, again, I love how nostalgic sort of this first room is in 1997. And just I recently also completed a move this past January, and just the act of packing and then unpacking, I just feel like very this is so relevant. Like I feel very emotionally attached to this game. I can definitely sympathize with putting all your things in a box and then trying to think of what around me, like what does this say about me? We have a comment
I
in
like the boombox.
Yes, I love the boombat. Definitely a throwback. Danielle says, I find it really interesting how the game is not letting you progress unless you've placed it in a specific space. It's interesting how we assume where these items belong. And I agree. So yeah, we weren't allowed to put the jump rope on on the ground. We have to sort of move the soccer ball out of the way before we keep going.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, and then Tan says, I see a Tamagotchi on a desk. How 90s is that? I know, right? So just looking around, she looks me a little bit.
I saw someone playing a Tamagotchi on the bus the other day.
Wow, that's definitely a throwback.
Yeah, and the dreidel.
Yeah, right. So we have a dreidel, a soccer trophy, and a soccer ball. So we can assume, or I would assume that maybe they're a little bit sporty, potentially. Maybe they're Jewish. Of course, this like nice, very nostalgic Lisa Frank-ish poster of the doggy. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think actually having the dreidel out, kind of amongst all these other objects, it feels very much like it came out of a box because you find it under the bed and then are like, where does this dreidel go? I don't know. I struggle with that all the time. That finding random things that are off season, and then thinking, oh, it's too much work to put it back somewhere else.
Right, having your Christmas lights all year round is instead of putting them away. That's what I do. Finally, my own room. I guess we have a scrapbook, so this is interesting. Our protagonist says, they finally have their own room in 1997. Yeah. Okay, so now we are.
It's very cute because I wonder who she was sharing a room with before.
Yeah. So now we are in 2004. So this is 7 years later. Okay, well, we find ourselves in maybe an apartment, a three room apartment with a kitchen, a bathroom, and then this bedroom.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, it hangs the hanger up for you.
Yeah, very convenient.
Yeah, I guess I should say to the viewers that I really don't know how games work. I'm not a video gamer, so this is all new to me.
And I love that. I feel like part of our goal with Humanities at Play is just sort of broad, just showing how, I don't know what the word I'm trying to say, just broaden your horizons when it comes to games. I think a lot of us think about, I don't know, Tetris or Mario Kart, maybe like the violent games that make it into the news. But then you get these really charming and lovely indie games like this, for instance, where it's a new way to tell a story, right? We're learning through the act of unpacking, which is so fun and relaxing. And it really, I think it can change a lot of people's minds about what gaming is and can be, especially as an art form.
Yeah, I think someone explained it to me that games are an immersive way of visual storytelling, which really changed my opinion of what they are, and they recommended a few to look at, and I think I read the Wikipedia page. I was like, oh wow, these actually sound really artful and beautiful.
I will just like to point out that I just found this toothbrush in a box with a poster and her piggy, which she kept. I'll just put this toothbrush here for now.
Yeah.
I think I'm just gonna finish unpacking all the boxes in this room before I move on. Okay. Oh, here's some tooth.
The packing strategies are not very clear.
I will say, in the last sort of stages of my packing, when I was getting ready to move, the first few weeks are like, oh, I'm super organized. I'm all ready, just take my time. And the last is just like, I'm just going to throw it all in a box. It just doesn't matter what the order is. I just got to get it packed before I have to leave.
Yeah. Oh, look, we have the technological progression of the 90s boombox to the early 2000s CD player.
Yes.
A single shoe.
I know.
Is it in that box?
Shoot, why are you here?
Stella, help yourself. So it also looks like she's got into drawing. We have a lot of different kinds of pencils and that little gesture doll.
Yes, we got this kind of, is it, what do you call these, like almost like Doc Marteny kind of boots? Very early 2000s. I am glad that this game includes, I think, underwear. This is very realistic.
Very good. Yeah.
Stacy, can you talk more about, our protagonist's name is Stella, for those of you who came in a little bit late to the name, and you said it was like a performance name. Can you chat more about that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I do a couple of different cabaret acts. I'm primarily a drag king. So I dress up as male characters and do kind of comedy performance, make lots of jokes, and I guess my kind of alter ego for arranging performance things is Stella Luna, after the children's book about a bat.
Uh-huh. Oh, I remember that book. I love Stella Luna. Sorry, I'm just gonna say this toaster was in a box with underwear, but
Why?
I'll move this. Why Stella?
Yeah, and I really found resonance in the book because this little cat called Stella Luna grows up with a family of birds and thinks that she's doing all the wrong things because she doesn't fit in with the other birds, and later discovers that she's actually a bat, and so the things that she thought were weird about herself, like sleeping upside down and not wanting to eat worms, and all the other birds were like, oh, you're weird, you don't like to eat worms. She actually found that, oh, I should be eating fruit instead and flying at night, and it's really a good metaphor for finding your true people.
I love that, Stacy. When did you start performing?
I think officially about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Before that, I would just kind of like to hop on a stage and steal a microphone.
Welcome in, the Geech. The Geech says, love you, Professor Q. So we love you too, the Geech. Thank you so much for stopping by. Several other people are super thrilled that you said Stella Luna, so definitely resonates with folks in chat. I'm gonna put this mouse in this mouse pad.
So the Rubik's Cube and the Game Boy have made it through.
Yes. Yeah, it is very fun seeing sort of what elements from 7 years ago have survived to the present as she's gotten older.
Yeah, and the soft toys, so the pig and the cat. That it seems like she's really discarded some of the others, but these might be the longest held comfort objects.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, something I'm really interested in looking at is the idea of comfort objects in archaeology of childhood specifically, and what kinds of things are culturally acceptable to use as a comfort object. So sometimes it's a toy or a blanket. I think I had a plastic spoon.
Oh.
But it tends to be whatever the child bonds with.
Can you talk more about this plastic spoon? No, I'm curious.
It was a bunch of different plastic spoons.
Okay.
I like to take a plastic spoon from the cafeteria at school when I was in elementary school and chew on it.
Okay.
Then I would use it to dig a hole because I wanted to see what was in the bottom of the hole and if I could find ancient things.
Okay.
And I think I must have been about 8. Um, and so then every day I would get a different spoon, and I would use that to dig. And I just quite liked holding the spoon and chewing on the spoon. Uh, and eventually I dug a really deep hole, and there was nothing at the bottom. Finally, I buried the spoon.
We have a.
I'm not really. I really don't know what meaning that has. It feels in retrospect very ritualistic, but I
qu-
think at the time I was just very bored by everyone else playing soccer, um, and I wanted to do something that was independent. And little did I know that I would spend much of my life digging holes. Uh, so it was quite forward looking.
Yes. We have a question for you in chat, Stacy. So, so someone asks, in archaeology, can you ever tell if an object has significant meaning to a person?
I don't know. I think that would be very difficult to tell. Um,
We had this
because
conversation too, just
yeah,
shortly
yeah,
before stream, right, about the things that people are buried with, and those might not always necessarily have been significant. But sorry, I'll let you continue. This is
yeah,
really
yeah,
interesting.
exactly. So there's a phrase in archaeology: the dead don't bury themselves, and so often the things that we think would look significant are not those that they decided to be there. Particularly if I mean, there's some clues. So there's a burial recently excavated in England, and the person was an abbess. And the way that we knew that she was an abbess, so the head of a an abbey, is that she had a lot of religious paraphernalia buried with her, and so these likely had significance to her as a person, but
Hmm.
they also had significance to the people who buried her. Um, and as opposed to when we find people who died accidentally. So I was telling you earlier about Otzi the Iceman, who died while he was crossing the mountains in the Alps. And so everything that he had with him was they were very utilitarian tools. So like a little fire starter and arrowheads and little pieces of rope and a backpack. And you could say that those things had significance in that they were important for what he was doing, which was hiking over the mountains, but we don't know if they had significance in his personal life,
Hmm.
as we would say about a comfort object.
I'm amazed that there's a frying
That all
pan
ties together. Oh yeah,
in the box with all of these objects. Um,
yeah,
Stacey, I want to follow up with you about the Iceman in a little bit, but I know that
yeah.
the inclusion of menstrual products are also really interesting here.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I'm pleasantly surprised that those are in there because they are often excluded. I mean, from talk from conversation in daily life, but also from the archaeological record.
Hmm.
And there was a study done in the 1970s looking at archaeology of garbage, because
Hmm.
generally archaeology is looking at ancient garbage and we think it's really cool because it's old, but actually it's just someone's broken dinner plates and all the bones of the animals that they cooked for dinner.
Hmm.
So the study in the 1970s examined a trash heap, a landfill's, I can't remember where it was, might have been Arizona. Um, and they reported a lot of personal hygiene trash, but they didn't report any menstrual products.
Hmm.
Of which, when I was writing about it, I did some calculations saying how many there should have been that they completely ignored categorically.
Hmm.
And because archaeology was traditionally a field practiced by men, and tended to be all the professors and the authors, even though there are a significant number of women working in archaeology. There's a cool project called Trowel Blazers, if anyone wants to look into it and see the kind of hidden history.
Hmm.
Famous archaeologists, famous women archaeologists, including Agatha Christie. Yeah, so menstruation wasn't really researched or talked about until very, very recently. And also all of the menstrual products that would have been used would have decomposed anyway,
Hmm.
because they would have been made of natural fibers.
It's a really good point. We have a lot of comments and questions for you. This is great. Thank you, everyone. I love seeing these coming through. So I'll start from the top. So I was asking someone in chat asked if you can ever tell if an object has significant meaning to a person. Someone wanted to follow up. Have you ever found something through a dig or a reading that you've made a backstory in your head for its significance?
Ooh, I think uh, I don't think I've ever imagined significance, but sometimes when we find something that we have no idea what it is, it's fun to make up stories about what it could have been and theories.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think there's also a difference between scientific conjecture and making things up. Um, but a lot of things I find tend to be very everyday. I think one of the more interesting things I found was so on your shoelaces, the little plastic bit at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's called an aglet, and I found one of those, except that it was made of um, it was tin, and it was late medieval.
Oh.
I could be getting that wrong, and so I think it was an object that definitely didn't have significance to the person at the time, except that when your shoelace starts to fray, then it becomes an annoying problem. So it's kind of personalizing this idea of like, oh, the fact that I found this little aglet by itself and not on a shoe means that somebody probably had like an awful day because the shoelace was starting to fall apart.
Yeah. We have a couple more comments. So the Geach says, I was going to suggest wearing objects can imply use and care and preference for an item, but sometimes the things we value we keep safe and clean, perhaps objects that have been repaired and kept. And then LOL, I remember growing up how everyone in my family would just look away and pretend that the ads for pads, tampons, etc. weren't happening. So weird.
Mm-hmm.
um, we have another comment. The Vagina Museum in London did a great exhibition on the history of periods and menstrual products. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. Really interesting. I didn't know that museum
Yeah, yeah.
existed.
Oh, it's amazing.
And then first time chatter, welcome in. I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong. So your name looks like Beth. I'm going to say Beth says, did you ever manage to find out what the unknown objects you found were?
I'm trying to think of which ones were the most mysterious. Uh, I think lots of them are scraps of pottery, called shards,
Mm-hmm.
and we never really know what they're from. So we can't tell if they were household use or anything else. And I mean, truly, we find sometimes such a massive objects that you don't really know. One of the categories of things I think is interesting is rocks in odd places. Sometimes you pick up a rock that has been discovered archaeologically in a place that seems, oh no, the other shoe.
I know.
I guess like a river stone that's found far from a river, and you think, oh, this must have been someone picking it up and carrying it. And you kind of feel it, and you're like, oh, this feels nice in my hand, and it's again a kind of humanizing element. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of things. If so, the way that I was working archaeologically was for a company that did excavations to build so that buildings could be built on that land.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would often find something, it would be like, I don't know what this is, and we'd send it off to the lab to be processed, and an expert would sometimes get back to us. But I think once I did find a piece of stamped pottery, so it had a little maker's mark in it, and someone we sent it away, and I actually got a message saying, "Hey, actually, that was a really cool stamped pottery you found. It's from the 3rd century, Romano British. We don't know what it means because it seems to be a really unique maker's mark." And I was like, "Oh, well, I guess that's the end of the trail." Sometimes we can't find out everything, but we can find out a little bit more.
Yes. The game is yelling at me because I think it doesn't want me to
No.
put the pot here, maybe up
Can the
here.
pot go? Oh yeah, the place where you keep big pots.
So oh my God, I have Doc's exact same color. Is this me? It could be. Is this you in 2004? Okay, so it doesn't like the shoes on the ground. Okay, well we'll put them here.
I like the folding of the t-shirts. I feel like
Yes.
the arrangement is going much better than the packing job that she did in at the previous residence.
I will say it is very strange, right? If you played this game or anyone else would, I'm sure we would all be, putting some of these things in different places. Like the posters might go
Mhm.
elsewhere or the books in a different order. Some things, of course, the game, the computer has to go on the desk. Um, but I guess this also the way I'm unpacking and putting things away must reveal something about me as a person, how I like to organize my life. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
also wondering, what's this saying about like my psychology as we're playing this
yeah.
game?
I think kitchens especially. I heard a good piece of advice, which is your optimum kitchen can be achieved by having somebody else come in and try to make a cup of tea.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think maybe if you're kind of set in your ways about where all your tea making supplies should be, then it might not be the most efficient.
Hmm.
It's always good to shake things up a little bit.
Oh, I like that, Stacey. I'm gonna think about that. Yeah, I guess if you're going to someone's house, right, where are things located and trying to think,
Yeah,
is this where I would put it if I lived here? Okay, it doesn't like
yeah.
my
Or things
iPod
like
here.
the alarm clock that's next to the bed. Is Stella a person who wakes up really easily, or should we put it further away across the room?
That's right. If we put it here, no, it won't let
Oh
us.
no, it doesn't like to be anywhere else.
The Geach says, Stacey, tell the pan on shelf story with the other Anna.
Oh, um, I once lived with a very tall person, uh, and for a couple of days I couldn't find where our pad was, and I thought I looked everywhere, and I complained to my roommate, and I was like, I don't know where this pad has gone. Um, and she said, "Oh, I don't know. I have no idea where I put it." I was like, "How could a pan go missing?" We lived in a very small apartment, and the next time I saw her cooking, she just reached up to a high shelf, took it down, absolutely no thought behind the maneuver, and I mean it's a good story about um, finding perspective and realizing that everyone works on different levels, literally.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we have completed. Let's just do a walkthrough, or I guess click through of this apartment before
Yeah.
we move on to the next level. So, okay, here is their bedroom. So we're now sort of in that early computer era, and I liked how you noted, she's kept some things from her childhood, but over time, I think now she's maybe more of an artist. Like still seems to be very much
Mm-hmm.
into art. This looks vaguely like a Donnie Darko DVD, which I kind of
Yeah.
find really interesting.
All around me are familiar faces.
Absolutely. And of course, the bathroom here. I wonder what it took to make this game. Like, I wonder if the designers went around like their own apartment and they sort of like made a list,
Mm-hmm.
so they could try to make it as realistic as possible. All right,
Yeah,
we have done
it's
it.
very cute.
Sticker. Okay.
Yay! What sticker do we get?
Private bathroom score. I love that. That's the note for this
Yeah.
for this level. Okay, we are now in 2007. So this is 3 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we now have this. Okay, so it looks like maybe a shared house with other people or apartment. So these bedrooms are off limit, but I can click through. It looks like we have a bed, a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, and a dining room. So now we have 5 spaces.
She's into sewing.
Yes, let's go. Go to the sewing room. Okay. And, again, I don't want to make too many assumptions, but it does look like almost like she's trying to make like a Sailor Moon outfit, maybe. Sort of like the clues from her childhood, the Sailor Moon backpack.
God.
This figurine, I love that. Maybe she's into cosplay. Welcome in. Hello. We always love first time chatters. Thanks so much for saying hi. All right, let's find out more. More video games. And I think this time, right, we're keeping in mind that our protagonist is sharing this space with other people, but we're still going
Mm-hmm.
through her belongings. That must be complicated, Stacy. Like, I'm sure you must have thoughts on when you move into a shared space with other roommates or even like friends and family, like how you negotiate what goes where and making sure everyone has enough
Yeah.
space to put their things.
Yeah. I think fortunately the house I'm in, we all moved in at the same time. So it was, I guess, easy to negotiate, although we did have some arguments over which kitchen utensils were the best and should be kept, and which ones would go with the color scheme.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I know that it can be a frequent source of contention, and particularly if you live with someone who leaves things out, or wants to, I guess, own more of the space. I visited a friend this weekend who said that I commented that in their shared house, which they owned, they had the smallest bedroom, and they said, "Well, I can keep my stuff in the rest of the house," and I thought that was very considerate.
Mm-hmm.
Letting the tenants have more of the space.
Yes.
Ooh, I see that. So the housemates that she's moved in with already had their own gaming system, but she's brought her own custom color one.
Yes, I got my own special blue one. And then Tan writes, only one bathroom in that house/apartment. Ouch. Yeah, I guess according to this layout, yeah, we have the 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and then this living space. Yes.
I think that's more common in the UK. I found in the US there's a preponderance of bathrooms. Here we have 3.5 people and only 1 bathroom. Oh, fluffy blanket.
Yes, I'm trying to find. Here's the bedroom.
Put the blanket in the living room.
So big. This is a very large blanket. We have a note.
I'm very interested in the desk as a concept. And so many places I moved into had the desk as standard. I have never liked using a desk. I tend to work just with my laptop on a couch.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I've moved to a previous house that had a desk, I'm like, why? Just to take up so much space.
Right. Yeah, I always I'm like hit or miss. Sometimes there are days where I just want to like stretch out. I'm lucky that I can use a laptop. I'm using a PC right now. I also have a work laptop, and if I'm able to, I can stretch out on a couch with it or even on a bed instead of like sitting up at a desk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, if you want to talk about sewing, I have a fun fact about the antiquity of clothes.
Yes, please share.
Let me just get the number right.
Okay.
There is. Oh, I don't know, it's gone. So the way that we discovered that when humans started wearing clothes is by looking at the antiquity of lice and their DNA.
What?
Oh, you know what? I'm just trying to Google. I can't remember off the top of my head how long ago it was. This is a fact that I repeat quite often, but head lice like to be cooler than body lice.
Okay.
And so at some point in human history, they divided, and that is theoretically the time that humans started wearing clothes because they kept their bodies warmer. And that's actually like the strongest evidence we have for how long humans have been wearing clothes, because clothes don't survive very long. And so we have some impressions of woven material in pottery that I think is about 15,000 years old.
Wow.
No, does that sound too old? Oh, I've had a very long day of teaching. My numbers brain has shut down.
Oh, no worries. So the Geach wrote in chat, garments appeared 70,000 years ago, suggests parasite DNA.
Yes, thank you.
Wow. And then another comment, head lice wear sunglasses and bomber jackets. Much cooler. Yes, when did lice start wearing clothing? Stacy, I'd also thought you might be interested to see these wigs in the living room. So I love that we have these. I don't know if this belongs to the protagonist or the people that she lives with, but hopefully some very like-minded people with all these like figurines and things that are already there.
I feel like this is an adorably nerdy house.
Yes. Yeah, I think we even have like a dice tower. They love maybe like D&D or board games.
Oh, okay,
Little
yeah,
dice.
yeah.
Very cool. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yes, those are
Um,
TTRPG sheets, tabletop role-playing game sheets. Yes.
okay. I went to someone's house recently for dinner and saw that they had Lego flowers
Oh.
instead of real flowers,
Uh-huh.
and I thought it was an extremely nerdy and very cute thing. Oh, the bus
Yes.
is the little London bus.
Yeah,
I
so
think the Leaning Tower of Pisa goes with. So it looks
mm-hmm.
like either she's been visiting European cities or someone has been bringing back souvenirs.
Right, yeah, because in our
Very
first
sweet.
level, we started out with this bus, and then we had this tower. Now we have the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That is really nice, seeing this evolution.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to take out these books. Lots of books. Stacey, how do you feel
Nice,
about
isn't it?
physical versus digital books? Do you have any strong
Ooh.
thoughts?
Yes. I think the idea that books have this wonderful magical power is called bibliomysticism, and I I do love a physical book. I'm not one of those people who's like, ooh, the book smell. I have to smell my books. But I find it very easy to flip back and find information because often I can remember approximately where in a book I found something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Particularly just little quotes. Although I do have a Kindle because I remember the last time I went traveling uh, with enough books for the summer when it was our last year in college, so it must have been 2009. I went on an excavation in Peru,
Mm-hmm.
and I figured that if I was there for 6 weeks, I would need 10 books,
Okay.
and they took up my entire suitcase. I only brought two pairs of trousers and two shirts, and uh, the rest was books, which I slowly distributed out to everyone else who was on the excavation team. But the next summer, I was given a Kindle, and it was revolutionary in my packing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I use both. I have the Kindle for, uh, I guess, thing more nonfiction. I would say because I don't tend to share nonfiction books, and then my housemates actually read quite a lot, so we tend to share novels between us. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll buy the paperback.
What kind of things do you like to read?
Um, I like I like books about medical history and scientific discoveries,
Okay.
but with the caveat that any book that's written about science is going to be pop science, and there's going to be inaccuracies in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to read everything with a grain of salt. Um, and then I think I also like just general contemporary fiction.
What are some good books you've read recently? Just curious. I always like asking people about what they're reading. Just I learn something new, and then it gives me something also to be excited about.
Oh, recently I haven't completed a book recently. Just because work has been quite full
Mm-hmm.
on. Um, oh, what's a good one? I read a novel recently called All the White Spaces,
Okay.
and I actually won a free copy on Twitter because I follow the author, um, who is she's called Ali Wilkes, and she writes about Arctic exploration. And so
Okay.
this was the story of someone who stowed away on an expedition shortly after the First World War, um, and it turns into a horror story, and it was very enthralling. And she actually sent it to me last summer when we were having a heat wave, and it's inscribed saying, "Hope this keeps you cool."
Oh.
So I would highly recommend it. Oh, I see you can't open the other door because the door's
Yes.
open.
Yeah, I kind of like that mechanic. Apologies game. I sort of put all the shoes on the ground because they are in the way. We have a question for you in chat. Of the people and cultures you've studied, who would you most like to live a day of?
um, there's a I get made fun of in my house because I say that the Middle Ages weren't as bad as people think.
Okay.
They really get a bad rap. People saying that they're unhygienic and disgusting, and people live very short lives. But these are all untrue, or could be equally true about the Middle Ages as, or specifically European Middle Ages,
Hmm.
um, because we tend to talk about time periods in a very Western centric way. Uh, they were just as bad and just as good as any other time period, and so I think I would like to spend a day in I would say London in 1200, uh, just so I can say, listen, it was actually pretty okay.
I love that, Stacey. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for asking that question, Love Milk. And John, welcome in. Glad to see that you're excited.
This is so this is interesting. So that the stuffed pig is no longer there, but the cat still is.
Yes, I'm hoping that the pig is in another box because I love that pig. Um,
Yeah, I also hope that it wasn't lost during a move, because that's tragic.
that does happen. Yes. Okay, we have this mouse. Oh, oh no, not to make space for the keyboard. Oh my goodness, there's so many
Oh,
books.
yeah,
Not a bad problem to have, but just
yeah. I once had another Chicago friend visiting, and at the time I had to clear out my whole flat because of a roof leak.
mm-hmm.
And so when she showed up, I said, I'm really sorry, I have no books right now because of the roof leak. And she said, oh, thank goodness, I was so worried about you.
Oh.
Just walking in and seeing that I didn't have any reading material. But I guess that's a very Chicago problem.
Yes, I love my books, and I agree about the physical versus digital. I love being able, if I'm reading a book and I think, oh, like what happened on earlier on, I can just like flip very quickly, and I like turning the page. But I also agree that when I travel, the iPad and being able to use a Kindle app
Mm-hmm.
was just revolutionary in terms of just freeing up space in my backpack
Yeah,
for the amount of books I could bring. So that's been really nice.
yeah. Oh, and what's great about the Kindle is that if you have the one that lights up, then you can fall asleep reading it, as opposed to with a book. Sometimes I'll wear a headlamp when I read books.
Hmm.
Climbing shoes. Yes. Oh, this is exciting.
What's this? Do you know what this is?
Um, it's a chalk bag.
Oh, it looks so big. I guess I'm used to them being smaller.
Maybe just the size discrepancy. Maybe she's got tiny feet. But yeah, I also in the last couple of years I became a climbing instructor, just because I didn't have enough careers. Um, so I'm really pleased that that's shown up.
Yes.
And what year are we in? 2007.
I believe we're in 2007. Um, we have a comment. Love Milk says, it didn't smell that bad. Haha.
Hmm.
And then the Geech says, thoughts on ebook versus audiobook, Stacy?
I don't listen to audiobooks. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I've never really got into the audiobook. And I feel like there's lots of things that you need a subscription, and I've just never really investigated.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I'm trying to find out where to put this apron. I'll just put it here for now. I was hoping there'd be like a hook, but I'll go back to. I'm trying to do one room at a time. I had an ex-boyfriend who really loved audiobooks. He would listen to them while he was doing chores around the house, like washing the dishes. But I find that my mind wanders quite a bit, especially like I know people also like to listen to audiobooks or podcasts when they're driving, but I get really distracted. So then by the time like I'll realize that 10 minutes have passed and I don't know what the person was saying, and then I feel like, oh, should I go back? What did I miss? So I'm a poor active listener.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to figure out where you stop listening, as opposed to sometimes I'll read a few pages in the book and think, oh, actually I wasn't really concentrating, but it's quite easy to flip back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, two. Is this two trash cans?
Oh no, there's going to be a conflict with the housemate.
Yeah.
Trash can to its cats.
Should I? Maybe this trash can should go elsewhere. Should she have her own? Oh no, there's one in the kitchen. Maybe in her
Maybe there was a
bedroom.
room bin.
Yeah. Can we put it under her desk? Okay, let's put it there for her snacks. That's where I would do.
Mhm.
Okay, so we see a yoga mat and
Yeah.
weights. This is really really fun. Stacy, so what are some? There's the pig. We found our pig.
Okay, good.
Where are some places that you've traveled, to do your research? Like, did you do your master's or your PhD work in like a specific like country or different parts of the world?
Yeah, I moved to London to do my master's, and then I decided to keep working in London for my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
All of my PhD research was on Sudanese material,
Okay.
and I mean, also it's really unfortunate that Sudan is uh, in the news quite a bit. All the British staff have been evacuated.
Mm.
They are not having the best of times right now. And yeah, there's collaboration between the British Museum and the NCAM, so the National Corporation of Antiquities and Museums. So we went down, excavated a cemetery, and then brought all the skeletons back to the British Museum to analyze. And actually, very very recently, just before all the conflict erupted, there was some really happy news that actually more Sudanese archaeologists are being trained there, so that we don't actually have to have this quite colonial relationship of
Mm.
experts coming in from abroad, and relying more on local expertise, which is something that I kind of saw happening when I went there in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm really pleased that was going on. But now I think the efforts are going to take a few years to get off the ground. And also everybody's in extreme danger because there's conflict.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've worked in Peru, in Israel, in Greece, uh, in Cyprus, and in Britain. I always forget somewhere when I make the list. I'm sure I've forgotten somewhere. But it's the great thing about working with skeletons is that there's skeletons everywhere, so
Yes.
you can find them worldwide. And particularly, my expertise is on leg bone shape,
Okay.
and finding out what kinds of activities people were doing based on the shape of their leg bones, whether they were walking or running or not, I would say, less mobile across the landscape. Um, and so it's good to have a kind of a worldwide comparison.
That's really fascinating. I am looking forward to asking more questions later. Um, Thank you for sharing. Tan wrote, my ADD kicks in during audiobook listening a lot of time, and I have to go back when my mind changes the channel, quote unquote, for a few minutes. Yes. Okay. What is this? Cleaning spray?
Looks like an deodorizer.
Like Febreze, maybe? I'll put you here.
Yeah, one of those like room sprays. Um, Oh, this is. Oh, I really miss being in countries where they put the laundry machine in a reasonable location, because in Britain they're in the kitchen and you're trying to eat dinner and someone's put a load of laundry on and it's loud.
Yeah, so this one, yeah, so this is in the bathroom and in the house I'm living in, ours is in a closet by the entryway, but it's very close to the kitchen and it scares my dog because it's a very loud
Oh.
washing machine. And chat Beth asked, what's your favorite find on a dig site?
Ooh, I oh, there's so many things that are interesting. The thing that the one that I talk about most often isn't really a find because it's a human.
Okay.
And so this was the skeleton of someone who had a broken femur, so the thigh bone, and it was actually broken in such a way that the bones had healed in an overlapped way. So this person had one leg that was shorter than the other,
Hmm.
but we could actually tell from the shape of the person's foot that they'd been walking on it for the rest of their life. So not only had this person um, experienced full healing, but they actually lived for many years with this shortened leg, and from all we can tell, was an active member of society.
Hmm.
They were fully included and participating as far as their skeleton goes. Which there's a long story that Margaret Mead is associated with, even though I'm absolutely sure that she didn't say the quote that you can tell from healed broken bones in ancient times that people were compassionate.
Hmm.
And I've actually written a blog post about how she didn't actually say that, but the concept is still very lovely.
No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I like that the very realistic dirty dishes in the
Yeah.
kitchen.
Was it somebody else we went to college with once sent me a picture of his sink saying, would you like to do archaeology of this? And there's stratigraphy in there. Stratigraphy is the layers of things where the older things are at the bottom. And I said, I absolutely do not want to do archaeology of your sink.
And you,
I should
you,
say that this person is an archaeologist himself.
okay, okay. Good note. You were talking about garbology earlier, so I wonder, does that how long has this been around? Like, I feel like there are all these new ologies and sort of new was it not acronyms, but like the pre like ludo archaeology or bioarchaeology.
Mm-hmm.
When did what about garbology? Do you know?
So garbology is from the 70s.
Okay.
And I guess it was kind of invented as a joke term. Um, uh, at least that's the impression I got from reading the paper.
Okay.
And I guess now we would call it material studies,
Hmm.
or waste studies or something that sounds um, less silly. But yeah, you can learn a lot by going through trash. One of my other careers is doing sustainability, and doing like waste management,
Okay.
and looking at, I mean, because like, it kind of intersects, is figuring out what's a sustainable way for people to get rid of their trash, particularly for events, and where you think about what are we going to have a preponderance of, and it's always glass bottles and cans.
Hmm.
But also if it's like a music festival, then there's going to be people camping, and so they're going to have food waste, and that needs to go in a different direction. And you can see thing here we have a pot noodle, which is like a ramen, but it's in some little cup. And actually, someone did event archaeology for Burning Man, I think, which is looking at what people were taking away because it's supposed to be a zero waste event.
Right. I recently had the um I guess I don't know about if privilege is the right word, but I was able to visit the site, the playa where
Oh wow.
Burning Man takes place because it is in northern Nevada, and they purchased a very large piece of land called Fly Ranch to continue their land conservation and work with
Mm-hmm.
public art and culture. And we'll be doing some collaborations with them later this year, which I'm very excited about. Um, but they do tours. So for anyone in Nevada, especially if you're in northern Nevada, you can go on tours of Fly Ranch and see some of the past examples of Burning Man art, learn more about the sort of sustainability and stewardship projects that they're doing. Um, and then the Friends of Black Rock, they're a volunteer organization, lead the tour. And you learn a lot too about the land. It was a really, really fascinating
Mm.
time. But I also heard a lot of, yeah, very interesting stories about, this making sure that, you pick up what you leave behind and
Yeah,
how
yeah,
difficult that can be.
yeah. It's a really interesting geological area as well. From what I've heard.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think so. In the U.S., we had the concept of leave no trace for forever. I mean, when I was doing lots of hiking and camping as a teenager, everything was very leave no trace. And then I moved to the UK, and there was less of a focus on it. But I think just because there's more places to put trash and less wilderness here.
Hmm.
That here you're never more than a few hours walk from a pub.
In chat, Daniel says, "Oh wow, that's super interesting. Going to have to do some searching of garbology." Yes. Something I love about anthropology and folklore, because I went to graduate school. I guess I went to graduate school twice. I did my master's first, and then I started my PhD at Indiana University Bloomington in the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology. And I remember one of my favorite classes that I took my first year was a folklore course on material culture. And we read a lot of really interesting books. I think one was about sort of like the history of sugar, and spices. And another one was about what happens to all of our leftover clothes, when we donate them or throw them away, and where they sort of end up
Ooh,
in other
yeah.
parts of the world. And it just made me think, right, about all the things we have around us and sort of their life cycle. And, sometimes, out of sight, out of mind, but that's not the case, right? When you throw something away or when you donate it, like it keeps going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It has to go somewhere. I mean, which is kind of the problem that we've created within capitalism and consumerism anyway. Um, which is why we should also try for reuse and upcycling.
Yes. They see the game doesn't like where I've put some of the things.
No.
I don't know where to put the yoga mat. Maybe in the living room?
Can you unroll it on the floor?
No, I wish. I put it. That's all right. We'll find a place for it. In chat, someone shares at a burn event I'm going to next week. They've actually changed LNT to leave better trace. So leave no trace to leave better trace. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. Um, Stacy, maybe this is something we could do now. So, I was just chatting about material culture and sort of thinking about garbology and all the things around us. Can you talk a little bit more about object-based learning? I think we sort of touched on maybe some
Yeah.
of those concepts as we've played this game, but what is object-based learning?
Um, I will answer that question in 1 second after I say that from
Yes.
this angle, the CD player looks a lot like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch,
This one? Or
the CD player back in the living room. Yeah.
oh.
So object-based learning is a different way of exploring objects in the world around us. In Western education, and particularly in higher education, we don't tend to use our bodies for learning. We use our minds and we use our eyes. And this is a lot of things that come out of like Enlightenment philosophy and life of the mind. Um, and we spend a lot of time not interacting with the world around us, but coldly and calmly observing it scientifically. Uh, and this even had a heyday in the late 1800s when a famous scientist observed people. He invented different instruments so that he could observe other humans at a distance without even having to talk to them or touch them. Um, and it was very, very colonialist and also extreme overtones of racism. Um, but so over the past maybe decade, 2 decades, there's been a movement to incorporate different types of learning, not just for people who are more kinesthetic learners or any of the other types, but
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. To say, what are we missing by not being able to touch things? And so one of the classes I teach for undergrads is called object-based learning.
Okay.
And we have handling sessions where we show them how to handle museum objects in a safe way, because sometimes the handling objects can be dangerous for the objects. Sometimes handling the objects can be dangerous for the humans. There are some that contain arsenic or lead or are spiky. One of my favorite objects to teach with is actually it's a little box, and it looks quite mysterious. Some people might think it's a music box, but actually, if you press on it, some spikes come out,
Oh.
and it is a bloodletting tool.
Huh.
Uh, and it goes along with a little like bloodletting bowl as well. And so from that we can so students can have kind of a time exploring and pressing on the buttons and figuring it out, and then we'll reveal that it's actually a medical device, but it belongs to a much older system of medicine that we no longer ascribe to, which is the idea of humors.
Hmm.
And so you can use an object to launch into a discussion, and it's useful to have a focal point to talk around, because otherwise I would just be giving a lecture on um, 18th, 17th century medicine and what are the humors, and show some slides, and then everyone is very bored.
But
Um,
now, right, with this tool, people can look at it, and it's must be
yeah,
fun to handle. Oh.
yeah, and so it's quite archaeological because it kind of sparks that connection that, oh, I'm touching this thing that is very old. I'm touching this thing that was maybe thousands of years old.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you get to skeletons, maybe that if I mean skeletons are kind of in a weird place because do you actually touch your skeleton? Um, if
Hopefully
I
not.
if I if I excavate a skeleton, then I feel like I'm the first person who is touching that that bone. Um, and so actually next week I am participating in a sensory training day that is moving even beyond just touching things. We are going to be talking about smelling things and tasting things, and it's all very exciting. And it's the idea to bring the senses and sensory awareness back into teaching.
Mm.
And I think it's also really important because um, it can make museum displays and teaching much more interactive, um, and just kind of engage more senses than just looking.
Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. I really love that. Uh, oh my goodness. Okay, if we have some more comments in chat. Like each writes, oh, like when we smash toilets. Some of these are coming, I think, probably much later after we just chatted about something. So I'm trying to remember when we talking about smashing toilets. When did you and Nikki
Oh,
smash toilets?
that's that was actually an archaeology of technology class in
Okay.
final year. Uh,
The only toilet I remember is the one that had fire coming out of it, and that was for a different
oh yeah,
reason.
that was great.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think the smashing toilets was an exercise, but the purpose of smashing toilets is to get the porcelain, which
Mm.
we then use to nap. So we carve the porcelain as if it were ancient pieces of stone and made stone tools.
Oh wow.
So yeah, experimental archaeology has long been an influence on object-based learning.
Real Girl says sensory awareness is so important and often overlooked. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
There's
cute.
there's a lot of museums doing really interesting sensory and touch tours, uh, and often the people on touch tours for people who are blind or partially sighted, um, and they are allowed to touch many things that the other visitors who are not on touch tours are not allowed to touch. So
Mm.
it's very special.
Stacy, would you like to do one last walkthrough of our house before we transition to a break, and then just a
Yeah,
longer focus interview with you? So let's
yeah.
start in her bedroom. Um, the game, you probably saw me noticing, it yelled at me until I put her
Mm-hmm.
diploma in the bedroom, which I thought was really
Ah, okay,
interesting.
yes.
So yes, we are glad that her piggy and cat have survived to today,
Mm-hmm.
and then whereas she's become a little bit more sporty, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you noticed the climbing
Let's
shoes
see.
and the chalk
Yeah,
bag, which I liked. You pointing out. Okay, so she lives in a shared space with people. Um, I don't know what it's called. I don't know if it's the archaeology of or the anthropology of, but just of living spaces. And I think specifically of when I was doing my dissertation field work in Mongolia. And
mm-hmm.
a lot of times when you're not in the capital city or modern cities, you're out in gers, GER. I think some people also, we also think of yurts, but in Mongolia they're called gers, which were like
Mm-hmm.
the one room round sort of like tent. And the way that those were structured and how people slept, like that was just, I couldn't imagine, having to share such tight quarters with, my parents and my siblings, and then like where would I put my things if I lived there? So I just felt very like spoiled when I came back to the US, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have this whole apartment to myself. I don't have to share with anyone else. But I loved how everything was structured, and it was just, you know, as you noticed in other parts of the world in which you've lived, things go different places or are structured differently. So that was really interesting to
Yeah, yeah,
me.
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, how was the Gare structured in relation to, I guess, sleeping versus activity? That were they different places, or was it just kind of a switch over at night?
Well, I think so in a more like one that would be used for longer term, so not one that you intend to like pack up, right? There would always be like a stove, right, in like the middle, just like where the hole is at the top, so like it could ventilate out. And then, as you go clockwise, things were laid out in a certain way. So there might be beds, and then you would have
Mm-hmm.
like chests to keep things in. But then sometimes, there would also be gers. I remember where we would be sleeping. It would just be, this is just, we have lots of people coming. We're just gonna put everyone in a ger.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no really sort of structure there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like that was sort of a really important to I don't want to call it ritual, but maybe like a tradition of how things are organized for
Mm-hmm.
specific reasons. Um, oh my goodness, we have lots of comments in chat. Thank you all so much. Danielle writes, interesting to think about how the senses can be implemented in knowledge sharing and dissemination, which grant warders really push for. I can definitely see the value of this. Um, this game reminds me a lot of conversations that have been had within quote unquote geographies of the home as a subsection of human and cultural geography. Love what you're doing here by implementing games like these in these kinds of discussions. Thank you so much.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. And then Beth says, you mentioned not all objects can be safely handled. Are there different methods of keeping objects safe, but also allowing people to handle and engage with them?
Yeah. So for the ones that might contain toxic materials, we tend to not assign those to students, but we might display them using gloves, putting them on surfaces that are then cleaned or disposed of. And our curators in the object-based lab take really good care of those. Um, some things are also too fragile, and so we might not assign them or not take them out very often. And so, really, it's collections care is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it might be something that is very, very delicate, but is worth studying. And so, we just have a lot of special um, caretaking teaching that goes on. So, our special collections librarians will do things like, put the book in front of you, and then instruct you how you should turn the pages, or maybe you shouldn't turn the pages. You need to call someone to do it for you who has more training. It really depends on the object, but yeah, we don't say that anything is off limits to study just because it's fragile or hazardous.
Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. Um, okay, let's see what our sort of like stamp achievement is, and then let's take a 5 minute break where everyone can go and grab water and stand and stretch, and we can come back more refreshed. Oh, I love that our sticker is low D20.
Oh, cute.
Okay, movie nights are gonna be awesome. Oh, she's very excited.
Oh,
Um,
very sweet.
oh, can I? Oh no, do not want to start over. No. Okay, I was just curious what clicking on things would do. All right, so we are going to transition everyone just to the next portion of our stream shortly. So we're going to take a break. So please don't go anywhere unless you're very busy. You're welcome to keep us on in the background, but we will be right back. Thank you so much for all of your questions today. We'll see you very soon. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and welcome in to those of you who might be new to our stream today. Stacy, thank you again so much for joining us all the way from London. I realize that you must be very tired and hungry, or hangry, as I like to call it. I often get very hangry, but I really appreciate you joining us from your time zone. So I was just thinking, in this portion of the stream, we've just completed sort of a little playthrough of some of the levels of unpacking. This is where people can get to know you and your work a little bit better. So I'll be asking you questions, but for anyone in chat who wants to ask questions or comment, always love to hear from you. So don't be shy about putting your questions in chat. So I'll get us started here, Stacy. Um, One thing that I loved is in your bio that you shared with me. I didn't read it out loud today on stream, but you said at the very end that your career trajectory makes doesn't make a lot of sense. Can you explain that? What do you mean by your career trajectory, and why don't you think that it makes much sense? Um, Stacey, I just realized that your audio is not working. So let's see if we can. And just, I don't think this is you. It might be me. So let's see. I think we just need to add a desktop audio. One moment. Sorry, everyone. Let's see if we can get you back here. Okay. We will add Stacy back. Apologies, everyone. I didn't realize that Stacy was muted. What we might do is I'm just gonna move us back here, and we'll just have our interview like this. Stacy, could you say something?
Hello?
Yes, I think you should be all good now. We'll just keep our interview like this for now. So we're on our gameplay screen, so we'll just keep it on sort of this very nice image of unpacking. But I think now people should be able to hear you.
Yeah, it's the finished one with the sewing machine.
Yes.
Which I like. So yeah, I think I was saying when I was muted that when I started my PhD, there seemed to be a clear career trajectory of finish the PhD, get a postdoc, become a professor, or something like that. But during my PhD, I developed too many other interests. I have always been a person with many interests. So the theater and cabaret and climbing, or I've actually been climbing since I was a teenager. Sewing, which I've also done since I was a child. And it seems like there were too many things to do. Um, and also, it's very difficult to get a career in any one of these things. So I have
Mhm.
a lot of part time work. So doing sustainability consulting for music festivals, performing. During lockdown, I was unemployed, and so I bought a much better sewing machine and started a tailoring business. I do a lot of science communication, and while it would be really nice to work at one thing full time um, forever and ever, and that would provide amazing job stability and comfort, it's also quite nice to be able to do a lot of things part time and just follow my interests. And not often when I tell people about, oh yeah, I've had this job, they think I'm a lot older than I am because uh, they think of it in one kind of pathway.
Mhm.
Whereas time is uh, what do we say? It's a wibbly wobbly, timey wimey thing. Uh,
Love that.
yeah, it's the quote from Doctor Who. It's non-linear. You can be all of these things at once. We can all contain multitudes.
Absolutely. We definitely all contain multitudes, and I also don't feel like I get a lot of questions. How do you end up at a humanities council? And definitely the path that I've taken to get to this is also kind of wibbly wobbly, you could
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Stacey, I asked earlier in our stream, I asked, how did you get interested in archaeology and bioarchaeology? I'm just wondering if you can sort of describe just sort of a general like background or sort of like, I don't want to say origin story, but how did you get to sort of where you are today? Just sort of like, your general interests and then, maybe about where you went to school and what you studied, just for anyone out there who
Yeah,
might want to be an
yeah.
archaeologist or a bioarchaeologist someday.
So I went to, or once I thought that I was definitely going to be an archaeologist, um, I applied to U Chicago not because of they actually don't have archaeology as a major. It's a subset of anthropology.
Hmm.
Um, but I applied regardless because I really just liked everything about U Chicago. It's nerdiness, it's bookishness, it's a penchant for attracting people who are just a little bit not mainstream. Um, and then the way that I got into bioarchaeology is that I loved everything about archaeology. I like learning about pottery. I like learning about tool making. I like learning about animal bones. I like learning about ancient food ways and building. And the one thing that I could never really get into was bones and mummies because they scared me.
Yeah.
I had nightmares about skeletons. I had nightmares about mummies. They gave me the creeps, and so I decided that the way the way to confront this was to take a course in bioarchaeology where we'd have to work with skeletons. Um, and weirdly, I loved it. Um, it was a little bit creepy at first. A lot of people think that it still is very creepy, but I guess it's a really good example of face your fears, and they might become your life passions. Uh, and so then I was looking for a place that I could study bioarchaeology.
Hmm.
Uh, and I was in contact with a lot of archaeologists who were at University College London, and I had always been kind of a bit of an Anglophile, which now that I'm here is kind of a weird thing to be because we tend to romanticize other countries and think that they don't have the same kind of problems that our home country has, but in fact, many of them still occur. So I applied. I moved here. I also happened to get into an internship at the British Museum at just the right time by emailing someone who had just started as a curator, saying, "Hey, I would like to be an intern. Uh, can I do that?" And he said, "Oh, I guess I've never had an intern before."
Oh.
So that started a really lovely working relationship. Um, that curator became my PhD supervisor. Uh, and yeah, through that, I went to work in Sudan. I worked on Sudanese material for about 5 years. Um, and then I went into commercial archaeology, which I was doing up until last year.
What is commercial archaeology?
So in the US, you call it it's CRM, which is contract resource management.
Okay.
And so it's developer led archaeology. So somebody wants to build a building or
Mm.
develop a piece of property. But there are laws in place saying that you are not allowed to do that if there's any ancient material present. Or, I mean, depending on the significance of it, uh, it needs to be fully researched first. So whenever you see a headline saying like discovery of ancient monument slows down hotel development by 3 years, that was always part of the plan. There will always be an evaluation, and we will always know that we're probably going to find something that's very important that
Hmm.
will take longer to investigate. So that's one of my pet peeves about news and how archaeology is represented.
Um, Rio Girl says interesting connections. Yeah, definitely. I would say, to any undergraduate or even, graduate student or interested adult, if you have any questions, I feel like don't be afraid to email people. I feel like for the most part, most academics always love hearing from people who
Mm-hmm.
are interested in their work and they like to know that
Oh
people
yeah.
are interested in their work and are aware of their existence. So don't be scared to send
Yeah,
questions if
yeah,
you have them,
absolutely.
or find connections. So thank you for sharing that, Stacy. Um, I wanted to ask you, so as you know, and we've chatted a little bit before you appeared on today's stream. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, amongst many other things. And you mentioned that you teach creative health, right? Which is a
Yes.
relatively new field, and I'd never heard of it. And so I would love for you to share with everyone, what creative health is, and maybe also that I believe ties into Mental Health Awareness Month as well.
Yeah. So creative health is any kind of non-clinical approach to health and well-being, because we tend to find that so many conditions and illnesses are they can be treated clinically, and if there is a clinical treatment to follow, then absolutely do that. But also, so much support for our well-being comes from communities and comes from things that are considered hobbies. So gardening, art, going for walks, being in nature. Um, Sometimes a lot of programs will have a well-being focus, so they'll say like martial arts for mental health. Um, but sometimes, if you're a martial artist, then just doing that can get you into a flow state. And so I go running and climbing, and I don't specifically say that I am doing those for my mental health or for well being. But I know that they're good because I know that they both get me into a flow state. Or for some people, listening to music, making art. And so there's a couple of threads that really tie them all together, which is doing something different, learning something new, and being in community. And so all these factors um, can help you relax, and can aid treatment. And I think actually something that's really interesting is uh, like I very strongly believe in using antidepressants. They are for many people a very beneficial tool. However, if you have problems that are uh, caused by other factors in your life, they may not actually work for you, and that has been shown in a couple of studies. Because if your problem is that you are in debt, or lack childcare, and um, are unemployed, then fortunately something in the UK called social prescribing has come up. I think there's similar things in the US as well, where someone can say, okay, here's how we can match you with people who are doing free childcare and debt
Mhm.
relief. And maybe also a really good thing would be for you to go for a walk in the park. Here's a group that does walking with childcare. And so trying to problem solve a number of factors that have, yeah, in a non-clinical way.
In your class, what do you how do you teach this? Like, how do you spread this, I guess, out over the course of a whole semester or quarter or however long sort of that section of coursework takes?
We, it's a whole year. It's a master's
Oh,
program,
wow. Okay.
um, and so we have a lot of guest speakers who come in and talk about their particular expertise.
Hmm.
Some of them talk about their lived experience being a service user of all of these provisions. And mostly what I'm teaching is research methods. So how do we evaluate programs? How do we make sure that, um, unfortunately, how do we make sure that the funding is being used in the most uh, useful utilitarian way? Um, and it's kind of, we've kind of reached an interesting point in that we know these interventions are good, and so the research is how do we make them better, but also how do we prove to funding bodies that they're worthwhile.
Hmm.
Uh, it's kind of a tricky situation because we know they're worthwhile. We know that the arts and creativity uh, and being in nature is so good for people's well-being. Uh, and yet because we're a science, we have to prove it.
I can definitely see that being difficult, saying like, we know this, but how do we, yeah, after grant writing, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Stacy, I'm gonna transition. I'm gonna ask you some fun questions, but again, for folks in chat, if you'd like to ask Stacy more about her research or anything that comes up, please feel free to do so in the chat. Stacy, I wanted to ask you, outside of the work that you do, your social science research and other things like that, what are some fun hobbies you have? I think it's really important to show that, outside of academic work, academics also, would hope have, other like fulfilling hobbies, whether it's reading or listening to music. So I'm curious what you do, and you've already touched on some of them, but what are some fun hobbies that you have or would like to pick up in the future?
Um, I guess in addition to running and climbing, I sing. Uh, I am not an amazing singer by any means. I worked very hard to get to what I call campfire quality. Um, I mean, it was a process through which I learned that singing is a muscle, or
Mm.
and so similar to how I taught myself that I could run a 5K by doing couch to 5K and then improve that to longer and longer distances. You just need to practice. You need training. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I'm still working on it, but I am in two different singing groups. One of which does sea shanties, um, so songs of the sea, songs about the sea. We do a lot of performances, and the other is a type of American folk music called sacred harp,
Mm.
and that's one of the most wonderful feelings is that each person takes turns leading a song from a really big book of songs and hymns, and you stand in the middle of people singing four-part harmony very loudly at you. Uh, and there's also a lot of research on how that stimulates oxytocin production and makes singing in harmony makes you happy.
That's very cool, Stacy. I love that. Also connected to that, if you don't mind me doing some like just quick promotion. So next week, actually, I believe a week from today, we're going to be joined by an ethnomusicologist, Dr. Tamara
Mm.
Turner, who's going to be talking to us about music and mental health and sort of the effect of vibrations upon the body. So I love that what you're saying now it kind of directly transitions into what we're going to be chatting with Tamara about next week, and she's going to lead us through some self care exercises with
Ooh.
vibrations in the body. So, like humming, maybe some light body percussion. So, I love that.
Mm.
Thank you. Are there any interesting research projects that you're working on right now? What are you doing?
I have uh, one research project right now, which is trying to get together community focus groups to talk about what is creative health and whether that's the right term to use. What are other people in our community talking about when they are doing these subjects? Because I think by imposing this name, creative health, or sometimes it's called community asset based interventions, it is imposing an idea of this is what we, the ivory tower, think you are doing. Uh, and so mostly I have been emailing, calling, and talking to people in person about their practices and what they call it, what they think it is, and barriers to um, them providing services. Or I mean, even the idea of services. Is it a service if it's a practice?
Stacey, something that I ask of every guest on our show, and this is because I love to see, what people will say and what it means to them. But Stacey, what do the humanities mean to you?
Uh,
There's no right
I
answer,
guess,
of course, but
yeah,
it's hard.
yeah. Um, I guess to me, because I feel like I'm more of a social scientist, but I do work in a very interdisciplinary way. Um, and I think it's the humanities is getting at the nature and meaning of things rather than the way of studying them. Uh, so things like literature can give you a different way of viewing things uh, than doing an analysis of a text, looking at keywords and phrases that relate to each other. And just thinking about things. Maybe humanities is thinking about things more holistically, and social science is breaking it down into component parts.
This is something we can continue to think about, I think, over the course of our program, like, as more and more people appear or watch these, will our understanding of the humanities change and how are they enriched by all the things people say? So Thank you, Stacy. We have a comment in chat from Beth who said, it's interesting that you mentioned projects having to constantly prove that they work to get funding. It seems like there's a lot of discourse around having to prove something arts and health works. Curious to know if you think that there's a way of evaluating projects that doesn't fall into the binary of something works or doesn't. And if so, what do you think that looks like?
Ooh,
If you need me to
I guess,
repeat that, let me know.
yeah, I think I've, uh, yeah, I mean, I was just lecturing today about uh, thinking of things in terms of binary versus non-binary data. Uh, that's really deep. um, I guess I mean, we could change works versus not works into how does it work, why does it work, for whom does it work, and eliminating the idea of something not working entirely. Um, because if or we could look at something and saying this seems to be working. Why? How can we replicate this? Often some things aren't really replicatable because they depend on one specific community or one specific person running it. Uh, but and then you get into kind of a businessy model that you see, oh, this person's doing um, X intervention that's music for mental health. How can we replicate that nationwide? And then it turns into a something that's too corporate. Uh, oh, I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I'll have to think about it.
That is a good question. Yeah, let's continue. If if in a few minutes or at the end of the stream, if you find that you have another follow up to that, we can certainly add that. Thank you, Beth, for asking. Um, Stacy, I wanted to ask. This is something that everyone in chat could potentially participate in. I know sometimes you lead fun exercises with your students, and one time you had them examine the contents of their bags or purses. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So that was part of object-based learning. And um, what I did was to teach about things that people are buried with versus things that people are found with. So earlier I was talking about Ötzi the Iceman,
Hmm.
who died while traveling through the Alps around 5,000 years ago, and he was found with basically camping and hunting supplies. Versus if he had been buried, if he died of, I guess, natural causes, he would have been buried with completely different supplies. So maybe some pots, maybe some offerings, but definitely not with a fire starter little kit. And so I asked on Facebook when I was preparing to do this lecture, hey friends, can you empty out the entire contents of your pockets and show me what's there? Um, and I got really, really interesting responses. I saw at first that people weren't including used tissues, which I know I always have in my pockets. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I commented, hey, where are your used tissues? And people went back and said, oh, I didn't know you wanted that. And I said, well, I said everything and I didn't mean everything. And so it was very interesting to see some kind of gender divisions.
Hmm.
Um, People did put their menstrual products, which is great. I think we've come a long way. Or maybe my friends are the kind of people who would feel very comfortable showing that. Um, there were some work-related things. I could definitely tell who was kind of a very prepared person. I had one friend who um, submitted base. I mean, it was really really fantastic what they kept in their purse. There were knitting supplies, there were sewing supplies, there were spare buttons, there were seeds, and they'd also laid out all of the seeds in order of size.
Oh my goodness.
Um, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And that's the kind of thing that we would do archaeologically is take note of every single thing, including tiny little I guess food remains, insect shells, because every object can tell a story, and put together they create this wonderful picture of who this person is. And so uh, it's also very very time specific. So maybe I've caught someone when they're just leaving the house to go to the grocery store and they only have their credit card and keys. Or maybe I've caught someone when they're in the middle of taking a train journey, and so they have all of their supplies for the rest of the week. And in archaeology, we use these clues to kind of figure it out.
Stacey, I loved what you said about how every object tells a story, and then that kind of tells you more about the person. And I love how unpacking is just sort of what a wonderful game in which you can sort of see this taking
Yeah.
place as you learn more about this person. In chat, we have a comment. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I never got round to sending you mine. This is Lynn, but I did take a picture. So
Oh, cute.
not too late to share with Stacy if you would like to do so. And I'm just wondering, can you do this exercise anywhere? Like if I guess it's very situational or depends on where you are, circumstantial. Like if I looked around at my desk right now and sort of like made note of all the contents, like what would that say
Mhm.
about me? Like is that like an exercise you do with your students or
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would say, what does it say about you as a person, but what does it also say about your desk, and what does it say about room use?
hmm.
And so all of these things. So if you think of the site of Pompeii as probably the most well-known example, you can tell what different rooms were used for because of the objects found in them. And so you can tell that something was a kitchen because it has cooking supplies, it has burn marks on the walls, in addition to the ones from Vesuvius, obviously. Um, it has big cooking pots that still had the food in them. And so if you go to your kitchen, you might find something similar and draw these parallels. Uh, and if you think about space use in the Gare as well, that might be more similar to an ancient British roundhouse, which I've seen some archaeologically, and we try to figure out. Oh, so this is the corner where they did all of the stone tool napping. This is the corner where they did the animal processing. This is the corner where it seems like there was some hay, so maybe that was more of a bedroom. And so it's putting all of these pieces of evidence together based on objects to figure out what people were doing.
I am going to think more critically about the way that my desk is structured now. I definitely think, well, A, first, oh gosh, I should probably, clean up this can or here's like a wrapper. So I always think immediately like, oh no, I need to clean up my desk. But now I'm thinking, what do the things around me like say about how I like what's important
Yeah.
to me? I see a lot of like pens and like sticky notes. So I think as I work, I always take notes on my computer, but I also really like writing down like thoughts and things as they happened. And so my desk is just full of notes, and I think I need to organize them better. There's definitely too many.
Yeah. Well, the purpose of archaeology is not to tell you to use less notes. But I do have I have a lot of people asking me in a very trolly way about, oh, well, if archaeologists look at garbage, then shouldn't I just not be throwing away my garbage? Should I be using more and more plastic? And the
Oh
answer
no.
is no, 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 no. We already have landfills to tell us all these things. Please don't stop using the plastic.
The Geach writes, we can probably learn something about society from the thought, oh no, I should probably clean. I agree. Yes, when people are coming over and then also just in everyday life. Um, do we have any last questions for Stacy from the chat? I think we'll wrap up in the next few minutes, just being mindful of her time. Stacy, I feel like I could ask you a million more questions. I love when we take everyday objects or things that we might not think are so important, but then you consider, the history or how it was made, who's found it significant.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just that one course I took when I was in graduate school on material culture just totally like blew my mind and just like, oh yes, now when I think about clothing, like I think about, all the work, like how did the fibers grow? Where did they come from? Who's making this? How did it end up in the
Yeah.
store?
Yeah.
It's everything is layers.
I think another kind of deep time sense. I love to go and experience deep time. Um, thinking of oh, what was it? Where was I? Sorry, I'm very tired. Um, how old clothes are, and so some things like you in many museums have ancient Egyptian clothing. So I used to
Mhm.
work in a museum of Egyptology, and I know I talked about clothing before and the lice, um, but the stitching is absolutely amazing. Very tiny stitches, very beautifully woven, and to think about how long people had to work to grow the fibers, to process the fibers, to weave the fibers together. And that's thousands of years of technological innovation. And we think of, now we're living in this like age of technology, and we all have, phones and computers. But everything around us in the built environment and the material world is technology. And we tend to ignore that when it comes to the ancient world. And I think looking at ancient clothes is a really good way to think about, wow, someone made that by hand. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful and precious and really, really indicative of I don't know. That's what humanity is. That's what the humanities are. It's humanizing everyday objects.
I'm going to keep a note of every time we have a eureka moment, or yes, this is what the humanities are now. Thank you. Stacy, is there anything else that you would like to share with our chat before we say goodbye for the evening? Evening for you, afternoon for me.
I think I don't really know if I have any kind of quick quirky takeaways. Besides, if you one of my weird hobbies is collecting friends' X-rays.
Okay.
If you have an X-ray of various parts of your body, I would like to have that for my teaching collection. If anyone's listening and wants to send me an X-ray of their broken ankle with a great story about it, the next time I teach bioarchaeology, I will use it.
Which course?
Anytime I teach bioarchaeology, so
bioarchaeology,
I'm not scheduled. Okay. I'm not scheduled to do it at the moment, but I'm sure the time will come again.
Oh, good to know. Well, I definitely have a very old, I think, sort of set of X-rays from actually when I was in college. We were probably in college at the same time when I got these X-rays taken. I'll find them for you and send them. Thank you, Stacy. All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, wherever you happen to be in the world. I really appreciate you joining us for Humanities at Play. Stacy, I had a ton of fun playing Unpacking and chatting with you. I would love to have you on again if you're interested. I'm sure you're also curious to see where our protagonist, where she ends up as we continue her story. And I would love to go on that adventure with you. For everyone in chat, we are going to be streaming again. We have 2 more streams this week, and I'm super excited about both of them. So I just wanted to tell you really quick before we say goodbye. This Thursday at 6 p.m., May 18th, also happens to be my birthday, but, doesn't matter. This is just a normal stream day. We're going to be streaming with Jeannie Hua, who is a former lawyer turned artist who is based in Las Vegas. We are going to be playing a game called Aviary Attorney. This is a game where the main character, we are going to be playing as a falcon who is a detective/attorney, and it is great fun. We're going to be voice acting the whole time. So if you'd like to learn more about, sort of how Jeannie took this path from lawyer to artist, but also we're going to be chatting about Asian American life experiences, just connecting this back to Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Month. We would love to have you there. If you love food, and I hope you all love food, or at least like the idea of food, this Saturday, May 20th at 3 p.m. Pacific, we are going to be hosting, for the first time, a special cooking demonstration on Twitch. We're going to be learning how to make chapati, which is a type of Nepalese street food. We're going to be chatting about food studies, sound studies, and Asian diaspora with our guest, who is an ethnomusicology student from Indiana University and also a great friend of mine from Nepal. So if you would like the recipe for this dish, join our stream. We can also send it out beforehand and put it on our website. But I'm really excited to do this cooking stream with Siyash. You don't want to miss out. Finally, I'm just going to share that you can always learn more about our events on our website and social media. So if you would like to follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, you can do so. You can also sign up for our newsletter. But we also rely on our friends like Stacy to share this on their own social media. And Stacy, I'm so glad that you did, and just getting the word out about our program since we're pretty brand new, and I think this is pretty experimental in the world of Humanities Council programming. So I really appreciate you, A, appearing on our program, and B, sharing this with your friends. So everyone in chat, thank you again so much for being with us here today. We've really loved chatting with you. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the game, and we would love to play Unpacking again in the future with Stacy. And if we do so, we'll let you know when we do. And we just have so many wonderful comments in chat. So thank you again so much. Stacy, have a wonderful night. Everyone, if you're across the pond, as you say, if you're across the pond from us, have a wonderful night. And well, let's all stay in touch, be kind to another, and let's leave a better trace. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Goodbye, everyone.